You are with the panel, Andrew Urquhart and Eloise Packham. Is it still weird, Eloise, having all these guests in your studio? Normally on Life FM, of course, you'll be doing Worship Wednesday requests.
Yeah, it's just me in the studio normally, so it's nice to have the company.
Yeah, and we are social distancing. For those people not watching the stream, we've been very, very careful and making sure that we stay safe. Important to do so in these COVID times. Now, you have got a question. Somebody's got a question come through for Tom, I understand.
Yes, so you can ask any questions on any of the Facebook Live videos. This one for Tom. With a large number of people having lost their jobs due to the impact of COVID-19, it means a lot more people will be applying for the same job. What would you recommend doing to make your CV stand out from the rest?
Look, that's such an important aspect. Your CV is your brochure, long story short. And these days, just having a list of the things you've done is not good enough. So it's about two key things. Firstly, thinking about achievements you've had in your career. So, let's say if you're a customer services person, you may have received some commendations. You may have met or exceeded sales targets. You may have been involved in some special projects just on the side. All these sort of things. They count because they show your value. Then secondly, it's about tailoring the CV to the needs of the reader, because this is what it's all about. I don't write a CV about me. I write the CV about this person I may never meet, and they are the audience. So what you need to do is look at the job description or the advertisement, look at the keywords they're asking for, and then mirror those in the front of your CV in a summary, and then also in your cover letter, making you a solution to the employer's problem.
Now, for a lot of people, it's been honestly a long time since they wrote their last CV, and I suppose getting their head around that, Lynette, wanting to bring you in on this one, there will be almost inevitably a group in society who are finding themselves unemployed, perhaps for the first time in their career, really needing to, I suppose, rethink their priorities, perhaps do a budget for the first time in their life. Yes, there have been people who've been poor and struggling for a long time, but actually, for those people making this adjustment, this is going to be particularly difficult.
That's right. There is a group who sit just above the middle, so that they've got enough to manage their everyday, and life's not, sort of affluent, but certainly safe, comfortable. And those people who, when they lose a job, the impacts are going to be widespread for them. So I think that we're going to see a whole group emerge who've never been in this space before. That's extremely disturbing, not just for them, but for the whole community, for all of society. And that's when I think of what Ganesh is saying, it's about a long journey back.
Yeah.
So once again, remembering that the people who are disproportionately impacted are often Maori and Polynesian, and households that are often already overcrowded, people who've got multiple jobs to make ends meet. And when one of those jobs goes, the whole family falls below that line.
Yeah. Let's be optimistic here for a moment, because this is a good thing to be doing from an economic point of view as well. Do you think that the new poor will have perhaps a better understanding, a better compassion for what it means for those who have been struggling, if you like, the underclass of society as a result of this?
I think there will be a huge impact of becoming aware. And once you know a thing, you can't unknow it. And when you feel yourself in that place, it does change your perspective. So I know that some people will become, and we've already seen some becoming very bitter and throwing blame about, like it's the fault of, but as Tom said, it's the fault of a virus. We can't alter that. But let's hope that it deepens some compassion within our society.
Yeah. Ganesh, your comment beforehand about the wage subsidies, how is this is almost artificially keeping the economy going. Of course, those wage subsidies will come to an end. At that time, do we have the momentum to keep going from an economic point of view? What will happen when the wage subsidies come to an end, do you think?
I think this falls back on government, undoubtedly. Government is the only person standing that has the ability to maintain that momentum, and whether it's shovel-ready projects, and we can argue about the validity of some of them, but whether it's shovel-ready projects or other types of spending, or whether it be social support spending, for want of a better word, those things are critical. And I think it's government, along with many of those community organisations, Lynette, in your place, your organisations and similar, are going to become critical, because I use the analogy of the marathon, and I've run a few. The worst part of a marathon is openly and bluntly is when you're alone. When you've done that, you've done the hard yards, and then after about 30k, you suddenly find yourself alone, and you're looking around for someone to go with. And I think that's the critical thing. We've got to make sure that no one feels alone. They may be without a job, but we've got to make sure we've got those supports around them, the financial supports, the social support, the emotional support. All of those things are just so important at times of we've got to be honest, some incredible stress that's going to be in front of many of us.
Tom, you wanted to comment on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ganesh. Totally. I think for a lot of small business owners, I think that is actually how many of them are feeling right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've got a business with staff, and I wake up and think, all right, paying them before I'm paying me, and just keeping things ticking along. It's one of these things that already I think many small to medium business owners are feeling like, as you say, totally out on their own, looking around. They've had some help from government. Maybe things are starting to bounce back a bit, and that's great, or maybe not. And they're the people that, that really, to a large extent, are the backbone of the economy in terms of employment, in terms of turnover, GDP.
Also, another payment which has helped people get through the tough COVID winter is the winter energy payment that was, of course, doubled by the government, not because the power bills have doubled, but as basically a support for those people impacted by COVID-19. Winter is finished, it's into spring. Lynette, the winter energy payment is stopping. This is going to be a pretty abrupt impact on people on the lowest wages in our economy.
Those who are already struggling will struggle even further, but this new group of people who struggle are going to experience something that they've not perhaps felt before. But I think we've kind of got to come back to saying that we know that benefit levels are too low. And this goes right back to the decisions of the 1980s, 90s, where we started to create that inequity in society, and that just deepens. And I do feel concerned that, as I said before, those who are going to come through this time fine, they'll be fine. Yep. They'll still be quite wealthy, or they'll still be upper middle class, if you want to use that terminology. But if we keep not supporting this subclass to rise up, then the whole fabric of our society and community is just lessened, deepened. The compassion is not present.
When people make decisions about who they're going to vote for, it's perhaps understandable that those who are struggling say, hey, I want to vote for the political party that is going to make sure that I have the money that I need to pay the bills, to pay my mortgage, to get through. There's, I suppose, an understandable amount of self-interest as we go into the polling booth. Who's going to get the best economic response for me? That makes sense on paper, doesn't it, Tom?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people will, on the whole, vote for what's best for them.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to some degree, step away from our tribalism that we may have always voted, one particular party for years and years and years, and actually stop and look at what the political parties are offering, and then make a decision, rather than just saying, I'm National, I'm Labour, I'm Greens.
Yeah.
Actually stop and think, well, actually, what are these parties offering, particularly in terms of, as you say, Lynette, compassion.
Yeah.
I know as a Christian, I see a lot of brothers and sisters of Christ on social media, not a lot of compassion sometimes. I'm thinking, man, that's not what we're called. Not what we're called to be, not what we're called to do. And so again, in terms of the politics, let's, for maybe once in our lives, I know for me, to a large extent, actually stop and have a good look, rather than just go, oh, yeah, no, that's right, I voted this way the last 15 times,
Well, lessons learned from COVID in some ways, and one of those is Zoom, of course, Ganesh. I mean, wonderful to have you Zooming in and being part of the panel today, but also recognising that if a virus affects our community, if one person's got it, none of us are safe. I mean, it's the same from an economic point of view as well. If there is an underclass of society who don't have the means to participate in that society, then that just doesn't affect the poor, That affects all of us, doesn't it?
I couldn't help but think before when you talked about us being appropriately socially distanced, that's fine and that's great. But, we've already got households where there are 10 and 12 people as the norm, and they live in close community, and, they're the people who are going to be ill.
Yeah.
They're the people who are going to be more vulnerable. And so the already vulnerable become more vulnerable in this kind of context.
Any thing further to add to that, Ganesh?
I think it's when you're talking about who to vote for and all, and that context. I think this is it's a true test of our values, a true test of whether we actually do value community, or is it just lip service. And if you're talking about making a decision about vote, make sure we have some honesty in the sense that this is a long haul. There is no quick fix. Who is actually going to be honestly telling us as a government or as a political party, actually, I haven't got all the answers. There is no quick fix. It's going to be tough. But in my mind, I'm looking for the one who honestly says, I'm going to look after the vulnerable, because they're the ones who are going to be the worst hit. And that's a reflection of my value set. And it's a test of our own values as to whether we are going to honestly live up to those.
Tom, you had a thought on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, sort of touched on before, but just elaborating further, I think this is the first time for many, many, many people we need to not just think about what's best for me, but what's best for our community. As a small business owner, you sort of tend to lean a certain way, but I also need to think about, social justice, inequality, these sort of things. And maybe when, Lord willing, everything's great in 8 years, we come back and go, great, now I'll vote how I normally would vote. But right now, as a nation, we need to factor in compassion, inequality, patience, these sort of things into our decision making.
Yeah, and these aren't the sort of terms normally associated with economics or politics, honestly, are they?
Well, I throw in one extra term, which is resilience,
and
that's the looking after them. Because if, as a small business owner, if we do actually have a resilient community that is able to confront these pandemics or whatever other challenge is going to be thrown at us, then myself as a small business owner, it just makes life a little bit easier. If I know that my workforce is healthy, even in the sense of even faced with these pandemics, and I have got a buffer to cope with that sort of stuff. So it's that resilience of the community that helps not just the community, but helps small business and the economy, all of that.
No, very good indeed. Eloise, in terms of the social media platform, lots of people commenting, or we got the situation where everybody's sort of lurking on the edges, they're watching, but they're too brave to put their hand up and, they're not brave enough to put their hand up and ask a question.
We do have a few more questions. So I guess this one will probably be for Ganesh. A question about the economy. We have both parties spending large amounts or wanting to on infrastructure. Is this going to help?
Short answer, yes. Longer answer, I'd much prefer that we send some more dollars in terms of that other form of infrastructure. I call it community infrastructure. So it's not the bricks and mortar, but it's the infrastructure that enables or facilitates community connections, those community networks. And whether it's organisations like Salvation Army, or whether it's whānau ora providers, or whether it's the kura, those sorts of social infrastructure, non-physical infrastructure, are just as important to make sure we remain connected and so we don't feel alone. So I'd use the word infrastructure very broadly.
And so not shovel ready. We don't need a shovel for this one. We just need to be able to help with the food parcel and perhaps some budgeting advice, right?
Exactly.
Lynette, any comments on that?
There's more than one kind of poverty. And I mean, we often just think of poverty as economic poverty, but poverty of spirit, poverty of well-being, that has as much negative impact on our communities as lack of money. And so I endorse what Ganesh is saying, is that putting more support infrastructure around people, we're only as good as the worst off person in our society. Yeah. We're only that good. And really, when we don't care for the least, the lost, the last, which is a bit of a Salvation Army term, then we've lost the values base of our society.
No, very good stuff indeed. Now, this panel discussion broadcasting on Rima and Life FM, but also on various social media platforms. I know, Eloise, you've got some more questions, but encouraging people who are watching, come on, jump in the deep end, ask your questions. We'll be back with more from the panel in just a moment. There we go. I got all the program buttons off.
Good.
So how many more questions have you got?
I think I have one, but I'll have a look
Oh, no, that's cool.
across.
I didn't want... Yeah.
Just a reminder as well, everyone on the stream is still watching now, so you're welcome
Yeah.
to address them during these breaks.
Okay, cool.
And just remind everyone.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for that. This is Justin, our social media guy. Yeah, sorry. Radio people, hey, I know. You've got to work with. Hey, thank you for joining the live stream and welcome behind the scenes. This is what happens in the radio studio when the ads are playing.
Yeah.
If you always wonder what happens, what we get up to, it's not that interesting. It's similar to what we do when the mics are on, right, Eloise? I mean,
Yeah.
What weird things do you do during the ad breaks on your show?
I try to eat if I can,
Okay.
but I don't have food with me today.
And then quickly swallow down whatever you're eating before the next break,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, no, I've certainly done that
Now,
before
I've
as well.
heard that on the radio. I heard people sort of gulping as they
Yeah.
and we're back again with
Yeah, exactly. I should keep an eye on when the ad break is finishing, though. Otherwise, we are jumping
yes.
back into it.
Right.
We are 30 seconds until we are back on. This will be our final break. And Lynette, you'll get the first question, but we'll do a question from Eloise first, and then the next question to you, and then we'll do a round of final comments before we wrap up. But no, it's going well. You are with the panel on Rima and Life FM, Andrew Urquhart and Eloise Packham hosting. I know, Eloise, you're a bit nervous about the panel beforehand. How are you going? How are you holding up?
Yeah, I'm good. It's actually going really great. And someone actually commented on the Life FM YouTube channel saying, thanks for doing these panels. Great to hear the knowledge about political topics. And I think that's good because, I mean, this isn't something that we'd normally do on Life FM. So it's great to do this in the lead up to the elections 2020, especially after this very strange year.
It has been a strange year indeed. Now, as we, I suppose, start to think about what life looks like after COVID, as we, I suppose, listen to the various promises and portfolios and policies, I understand that, well, even as we're chatting here, the Prime Minister's announcing the tax policy for the Labour Party. So, yeah, it'd be interesting. Ganesh, are you following this one? You getting any of the feeds through on your phone?
I haven't looked, but I'll no doubt look in due course.
Well, I mean, that'll be an interesting one because, I mean, it's all very well to say, hey, let's stimulate the economy, but sometime in the future, of course, we're going to have to pay for this. In order to do that, we might need to look at different ways of taxing people, correct?
Short answer, yes. Longer answer, I think it's the having to pay for it is a bit of a misnomer. I think the having to pay for it is making sure that we have good infrastructure around both social and community and physical. That's how we pay for it. The tax thing, though, is something we have to go to if we're ever going to confront this inequality divide that we've built up. The last 40 years we've had taxes taking from the poor and giving to the rich. Hopefully in the next few years we have some tax. We rebalance that a little bit back the other way. It's well due time for that to happen.
Now, as well as the various political parties having their policies and their manifestos, I know the Salvation Army also has a lot to say in this space in terms of what our society could look like and the changes that we could make, perhaps to make us, I don't know, a more compassionate society post-COVID. Lynette, what's your thoughts on that? A vision for coming out of this as a better society?
a fair and just economy would reflect housing that is adequate for everybody, and not the divide that we see now, not the gaps in our housing portfolio as a country. So safe, affordable housing, and I mean, it feels like just something we just continue to say, but it must be said. Adequate income so that nobody goes hungry. It is a real concern to us that in every situation where a family does not have enough income, if we say the word family, we're usually meaning there are children.
Yeah. There
are children, and child poverty that's an intergenerational impact that's not going to serve us well.
This is something which, of course, current Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says that she wanted to take personal responsibility for. The children don't get to vote, though, and yet when the economy isn't doing so well, they're the first ones to suffer.
Well, it's children not getting the right medical attention when they've got illnesses. It's children not being clothed properly. It's children's education being compromised. And if the child's education is compromised, all of their life opportunities shrink.
Yeah.
And so you've got that long tail to this. So children, so important.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Ganesh, similar to what you were saying, this is a marathon. This is something which is not just about the next political cycle or even economic cycle. This is about some multi-generational problems within our society.
Oh, undoubtedly. And we have to be realistic about how we address these. And we have to address them today rather than delayed. There's always been a reason about how we can't afford to do these things.
Yeah.
We've got to be honest with ourselves. Who's at the table, who's making those decisions? And there's children are never at the table to make those decisions.
Yeah.
It should be.
You say we've never had the money to do this. Well, if last year we said, well, how about we spend billions of dollars on wage subsidies? We didn't have the money for that either. But in a crisis, we find the money. In terms of child poverty, this has been a crisis for generations.
Exactly. And we have to get past that. We can't afford it. We have to get to a caring, kind, compassionate community that puts that at the top of our priority list, that reflects our values. Yeah. We have to be able to afford it.
I think, we're all proud Kiwis. We love New Zealand. New Zealand rules. But I think that top third you're talking about, Lynette, really need to take accountability now.
Yeah.
We as a country are wounded. We are wounded. And the most vulnerable are the ones really, really wounded. And there is a third of people out there who, hey, it's been tough, didn't get down to the batch, that sort of stuff. And these sort of people need, I think, respectfully, need to take accountability to actually now start supporting the other half, 2/3 of our country right now. I know myself, I am the chair of the county's Manukau Kindergarten Association. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's a wonderful opportunity to be part of the strategy for young, particularly Māori and Pacifica children in a really, really tough area. And I think for people who have some really great skills, some leadership capabilities, not just, dipping into the pocket, and helping, but also intellectually and commercially helping through reaching out to organisations, partnering with organisations in need, and actually saying, I'm going to do my bit. I've been God-given some skills, and now I'm going to use them.
Not just looking to the government or even agencies such as the Salvation Army to be the problem or somebody to blame when it doesn't work the way we think, but as a collective community saying, what can we do to make Aotearoa New Zealand a better place?
Absolutely. Step up. We've, again, God's blessed us all individually with so many wonderful skills that if we're doing well, let's think about how can I help that school out? How can I help out that organisation, that not-for-profit Salvation Army? What can I do to step up, not just dollar-wise, but also skill-wise? Is there something I can assist with? Yeah,
and that connected society that you were talking about before, it's not just a financial merry-go-round, it's the connectiveness.
And I think it's really, I think we have lost the vision of what a healthy whole society looks like, and the recognition that there's just an enormous strength and a resilience in a strong community, a community of caring, and that then does have a knock-on effect economically. So I think, this is a tough time, but it's also a time of opportunity to do some new things, to think about some things differently, and to maybe get that message out there that, everybody's got a part to play. We can all be part of building a stronger a stronger world.
Yeah, no, very good indeed. Tom, you're a small business owner. There are a lot of small business owners who are saying, gosh, don't think I can make Christmas. Is there the opportunity, though, for a lot of these people to say, okay, this current incarnation of my business, that's not going to make Christmas, but actually we can regroup, we can pivot, there's another good COVID word, we can relaunch into something and change perhaps the product or service that we're offering. Small business owners are going to suffer, but perhaps in a post, once we come out of this, they can regroup and perhaps emerge even stronger.
Absolutely. I mean, my brother-in-law, he owns a fast food outlet in Awakuni, and it sells real high-end hamburgers, and that's
It's the Blind Finch, right?
Blind Finch.
Oh,
There
such
you
an
go.
shout out to your brother-in-law. It's an excellent place to eat. Next time you're in Awakuni, Blind Finch. Don't have to pay me in burgers, but you can if you like. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, free advertising.
Yeah, look at that. But also, he realised, that things were doing it hard at level 4. So he pivoted and included a sort of mid-high-end bakery. And now he creates these amazing, baked goods for the community. Suddenly creating a whole new stream of income for himself to lock in his employability with his staff, to keep the business going, and just something that was born out of the pandemic, born out of probably terror, born out of fear, born out of, gee whiz, how are we going to get through this, but able to pivot and have the skills to be able to do that, and then to, I think as Ganesh had said before, that ability to be resilient, to be able to go, all right, well, we need to, what are our options?
If I can remember back to my schoolboy economics, Ganesh, economics is a lot about confidence and trust. Do you think that particularly small business owners, or perhaps some of the bigger industries, some of the key industries in our society, some of the backbones of our economy, have the confidence and trust to do what they need to do to survive? I mean, a breaking of confidence really is going to be doing more damage to the economy even than COVID, perhaps.
A lot depends on confidence, but a lot also is around your time horizon. And I think that for too long, perhaps we've been focusing on the short term, and this goes for not just small business, but also the bigger businesses. And maybe we need to just start thinking about our own time horizon and our own reason for being in business. What is our kaupapa? Is it really that bottom line, or is it more about contributing to community? And whether that's through providing jobs or providing leadership skills, all of those other sorts of things that we tend to put in the nice to haves. Now's the time to bring them in, and we all go away with these strategic intentions, but then we park them focusing on the cash flow. Let's think about our kaupapa. Is it about the next 5 years rather than the 5 months? And yes, it's going to be tough now, but everybody's been tough. Now's the time to bring those skills to the front.
We are asking for businesses and for the economy. We keep talking about this long-term strategy and the marathon metaphor. But actually, let's face it, the political cycle is 3 years, and it's difficult for politicians to think beyond whether or not they're going to get elected back in at the end of October. In terms of this short political cycle and having a long-term economic strategy which is dependent upon the will of politicians, I mean, now is the time where we've got their undivided attention. This is a great time to lobby for change. But actually, is that part of the problem, having a long-term view with a short-term cycle?
I think that's a convenient excuse. It doesn't help, I'll be honest, but I think that's a convenient excuse. I think I'd ram it back home to what I call leadership. And it's not just the political leadership. I think it is the political, community, business leadership in New Zealand, Aotearoa. What is our kaupapa? What is our, I hate the word vision, but what are we heading towards? Do we seriously want a connected community, inclusive economy, society, or are we just in it all for ourselves?
And again, we don't need to rely on necessarily the government to lead that. We can make those leadership decisions as members of our society.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tom?
Yeah, just echo what you're saying. I mean, I think now, a lot of our politicians, hey, well, in this cycle we're going to do this, and this cycle we're going to do that. But we need to have politicians looking 20 years out. We need people to say, all right, in 20 years, this is where we're at and this is how we're going to get there. Not, hey, all right, well, we'll do this for the next 3 years, make this part of the society happy, all the rest you can get stuffed. So it's really about who's going to give us, and again, I hate to say it, but that vision, who's going to give us that compassionate vision for the future that works economically. That's really what we need to discover.
Hey, we're coming to the end of our time here. Just before we go, just wanting to give each of you the opportunity, just in a couple of minutes, to, I suppose, speaking to the person for whom the economy and the economic performance of political parties is an important factor that influences their choice and the vote that they'll be making on the 17th of October. Speak to that person. Lynette, we'll start with you. Speak to that person. What sort of things should they consider when they make that choice?
Recognise the impact of leaving people behind in our society and in our economy. Recognise that and be aware of the benefits that would come if we bring everyone along, if we lift the bottom layer of society and what that contributes, and think about our values. Think about our values. Who do we care for and what do we care about?
Tom?
Absolutely, Nat. What are the values that we share in Aotearoa? What are the things that make us us? And really think about, well, who am I voting for based upon the wider focus? For once in our lives, let's just not think about, right, this is how I've always voted and this is what's best for me. Let's think about, okay, who's going to give us the best shot getting through this and taking us all together rather than just taking a few of us in the left. Lynette and organisations like the Sellers have to really look after.
Ganesh, any thoughts?
I think it is about looking at ourselves and asking, is it really just all about me? Is it just what's in it for me? Or are we going to be a little bit more open and honest? And we always say we're concerned about the wider community. And I am very, I suppose I've always been encouraged by the Te Ao Māori perspective when they talk about their mokopuna mokopuna. Let's start thinking about what we want to leave for the next generation rather than what's in it for us. Let's be serious about our next generation. We always claim to be, but I think that's the critical element. And it's going to be tough, let's be honest. It's tough now, but the objective for me is let's make it less tough for the next generation.
Are you guys optimistic collectively? I mean, it has been a tough year. Let's put up a Christmas tree and call it one. But are you optimistic? I think, have we bottomed out? Is 2021 going to be a better year?
Personally, myself, absolutely. I feel that I'm very optimistic by nature, but I certainly feel that moving forward, we're gonna. I like to believe we're going to make some good choices as a nation, and I really think 2021, 2022 again will be a standout country in the world for how A, we dealt with it, and B, how we move forward.
And looking after each other in the process. Sorry, I think my voice has come to an end. As we conclude the panel, Ganesh, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Ganesh, Nana and Tom O'Neill, again, thank you for your comments. And Lynette Hutson as well, thank you very much for your contribution. Eloise, we got there to the end of it. We have completed the panel. Lots of people still engaging on social media.
Yeah, I guess to wrap it up, Cheryl commented saying, thanks, guys, very interesting. Love the justice and compassion coming through.
Very good indeed. We're going to do this again next Wednesday. The panel is going to be a regular fixture next week on Wednesday at 11 o'clock, talking about the environment. Until then, ka kite anō, mā te wā. Ganesh, we're all done. Thank you very much, sir. You happy with that? That was fun. I really appreciate your contribution. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and thank you, Tom and Lynette.
Yeah, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Cheers.